2015 to 2016 Kawasaki Vulcan 1700 Vaquero, Vulcan 1700 Voyager. The Vulcan 1700 series from Kawasaki launched in 2009, replacing the existing 1600 series and carries forward the Vulcan family that started in 1984. The Vaquero, the bagger of the pair, and the Voyager, the full dresser, both come with ABS and, as the name suggests, the 1700cc engine in the V-twin configuration with liquid cooling and a 6-speed transmission. Ready for a cruise around town or hitting the open road, the Vulcan 1700s are well fitted and all around solid. Continue reading for my review of the Kawasaki Vulcan 1700 Vaquero and Vulcan 1700 Voyager. Kawasaki calls it hot rod style elements on the dash, and I wanted to see if I agreed with their claim. I do. The color-matched dash holds analog gauges, at least the main gauges, fuel, speedometer, tach and temperature. It's liquid-cooled, yes? That I find easier to read at a glance with my old lady eyesight than digital readouts that are hard to see anyway in bright light. Tech still finds a place in the classic styling with an LCD display panel and onboard amenities such as the AM/FM/WB audio system with iPod registered and Sirius XM registered compatibility and speed-sensitive volume control. I expect a touring bike to have at minimum a decent sound system, so no whining here. Do I consider dual locking side cases and, for the Voyager, a top case big enough to hold 2 full-face helmets noteworthy? Not really, not anymore. I expect it from a touring bike, so no disappointment in the Vulcan 1700s. Small, lockable glove boxes below the speakers give you places to store your bits and bobs. The Vaquero with its blacked-out Bruiser Cruise look gets black trim on the turn signals, tail light and instrument panel for 2016. The full-dresser sibling, the Voyager, gets a tall, touring windscreen and a top case. Cruise control is a bit easier to get to and can be set and adjusted from the right side of the handlebar. It's a proper cruise control, not just a throttle lock. Push-button action sets the cruise control to as low as 30 miles per hour up to 85 miles per hour using a toggling switch to adjust your speed without leaving cruise control mode. It does a good job of maintaining your speed even on hills. The half-ton plus operating weight shows the factory dropped all pretension of keeping things light, and built for strength instead. Steel makes up the tubing for the double down tube, double cradle frame and squared-off backbone member, and that brings its own obvious advantages over aluminum skeletons. The steering head angle, forks and 16-inch wheels leaves us with a 30-degree rake and 7-inch trail on 65.6-inch wheelbase, right near the upper end of the spectrum, so you should be able to expect a reasonably stable ride at speed and good tracking in a crosswind. You can also expect it to be a little reluctant in the corners, but most of you already know you don't get to have it both ways. All this adds up to over 100 inches of bike, and one fairly large footprint. Long doesn't necessarily equate to tall in this case. The 28.7-inch seat height is reasonably low and should be okay for all but the shortest inseams. Air shocks and 45mm forks tend to the suspension duties with 5.5 inches of travel up front and 3.1 in the back. While that isn't what one would call a lot of rear-wheel travel, I will offer that air-adjustable shocks are generally fairly plush, and these come with a 4-position rebound damping adjuster, so at least you can get dialed in for load and conditions. Dual, 4-pot calipers bind the 300mm front brake discs, and a twin-piston binder grabs the 300mm rear disc. All this falls under the management of Kawasaki's proprietary ABS, the Kawasaki Advanced Coactive Braking Technology, KAC2. Kawasaki gave the Vulcan 1700 family what the American buyer likes to see, lots of inches in a V-twin configuration. At 1700cc, 103.7 cubic inches, this is one of the larger V-twins in the world. And even though it has a lot of mass to get moving, one can argue that it has enough ass to move it. The factory claims a whopping 107.6 pound-feet of torque out of this water-cooled, 52-degree mill, unquestionably well within power cruiser territory. The 102 mm bore and 104 mm stroke leaves us just a hair under square, and the 9.5:1 compression ratio means you won't have to buy the premium champagne at the pump. A pair of 42 mm throttle bodies meter the fuel, and a 6-speed, overdrive ratio transmission with a positive neutral finder sends power down the carbon-reinforced drive belt to make the final connection to the pavement. So, the bike is a little too heavy to use as a dragster, but for cruising and touring, especially at interstate speeds, this is plenty of engine for decisive roll-ons, and the odd top gear, top 2, really, makes for a reasonable cruising RPM. MSRP on the 2016 Vaquero is $16,699 and the Voyager, $17,399. For 2016, the Vaquero comes in pearl crystal white, a big improvement over the Power Ranger green offered 2015, though you could go for the metallic carbon gray if iridescent green isn't your thing. The Voyager comes shot in metallic phantom silver and metallic spark black, a rather sideways grade from last year's metallic carbon gray and metallic spark black. Kawasaki covers your Vulcan 1700 with a 36-month limited warranty with the option to go for 12, 24, or 36 months with Kawasaki Protection Plus. There are no shortage of power cruiser tourers to pick from, but I find the Road Glide from Harley-Davidson to be the most natural, and probably predictable, fairing. Similar enough to really get an apples-to-apples comparison. I feel like I can focus on some of the details since the broad strokes are so closely aligned. Since the Road Glide comes with the low-profile windshield and clean rear end, I'm going to go with the Vaquero here, but it is worth noting the Road Glide Ultra makes for a good competitor for the Vulcan 1700 Voyager. Low, wide and a little mean, both contenders show that boulevard bruiser panache. Between the fixed fairing, fat front end and saddle that tapers down to something just a little better than a vestigial pillion pad. I prefer the HD style a little because of the dual headlights mainly, definitely not feeling the Cyclops headlight on the Vaquero or the fairing lowers that seem to make the fairing cover the entire front of the bike. To be fair, the lowers do good things for the radiator in terms of airflow and minimizing the visual impact of the core itself. As far as gadgetry goes, both carry a bit, if not as much as one would like. ABS and adjustable rear shocks are present across the board, but neither offers any sort of dynamic, adjustable front suspension or any sort of traction control system, nuggets that are starting to fall onto the list of expected features. While both rides carry entertainment equipment in the form of a radio with a number of input options, HD had to give the electronics suite a name of its own, infotainment. Kawasaki is a little reserved on the specifics of the Vulcan family radios, so I will spare the blow-by-blow and simply state that HD comes out on top of the stereo electronics battle. The Vulcan 1700, 103.7 cubic inch plant is just a skosh bigger than the high-output twin-cam 103, 103.1 cubic inch, and a bit more powerful with 107.6 pounds of grunt versus the 104.7 pounds from the twin-cam. Another slight difference, and seriously, anything over 100 pound-feet of torque is plenty, so I won't quibble over a few pounds here or there. I'll save that for the price section. And here we are. Kawasaki delivers a punishing blow to the Road Glide with a $16,699 MSRP on the Vaquero, a significant amount cheaper than the $21,199 Road Glide. True, HD is still the king of paint, and enjoys a certain name recognition, but for many without brand loyalty, something in the Vulcan 1700 lineup may be up your alley. My husband and fellow writer, TJ Hinton, says, "Gotta say, The Vulcan 1700 family looks an awful lot like the Road Glide Ultra, or even the Magnum or 8-ball from Victory. Like, an awful lot. At the very least, you can be sure that it falls within the bruiser look as is currently in vogue, and does provide a less expensive alternative for someone looking for that look and feel, but not necessarily enamored with the existing American fare. It has floorboards, not a surprise for a cruiser, touring bike, and you'll scrap them a lot if you like to throw a big bike around, but that also shouldn't be a surprise. It has plenty of power and lots of torque that come on early. For a big, heavy bike, it's surprisingly responsive. If you plan to spend time on the interstate, you might want to go with the touring windscreen on the Vaquero to save yourself some head buffeting. Even at highway speeds, you're only cranking about 2,500 revolutions per minute, so you have plenty of oomph when you need to hit the throttle. All in all, it's a nice ride and absorbs the bumps with aplomb.